Welcome to the Oddfrog Chop Shop, your one-stop podcast for all things toy, design, collectible, comic book, video game, movies, pop culture, and more. And now please welcome your hosts, Kelly Greenwood and Eddie Hermosillo.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Oddfrog Chop Shop, your one-stop shop for toys, pop culture, games, and all things 1/12 scale, action figures, and vehicles. Today we have a very special guest. Today our guest is Drew Playkos. Drew was Eddie and I's professor at Otis. He taught methods and materials as well as safety and compliance. And we've got some questions we've put together for Drew about the toy industry. A lot of you guys have, communicated with us and been real great about asking questions about the difference between indie startups and big toy companies. And Drew is an expert in this, so I'm just going to introduce him real quick, and then we'll get right to it. Drew Playkos has worked in the toy industry since the 1980s. Which, as we all know, is hands down the finest decade for toys of all time. Drew has worked on projects for companies such as Mattel, Lakeside Games, Disney, Daiso, and Thermos, and other big brand companies. He has designed countless promotional kid meal toys for fast food chains such as McDonald's, Taco Bell, Carl's Jr., Arby's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Pizza Hut, Burger King, as well as many others. Drew's consulting practice, Insight Out, specializes in design for compliance. That is, items that are designed to fully comply with criteria such as cost, function, appearance, regulatory safety, reliability, and quality. Insight Out has maintained an extensive ongoing relationship with a network of resources both here in the United States and abroad. Drew is also a professor at Otis College of Art and Design. He has been instructing in toy design methods and materials and human factors in design at Otis for over 20 years. Otis has a bachelor's degree program for toy design in which both I and Eddie graduated. Drew holds a BA in industrial arts from CSULA, Los Angeles, California, and an MBA from the University of St. Thomas, St. Paul, Minnesota. Drew is also an inventor and holds a patent for a 4-wheel hill climbing toy truck. And he is also a very talented guitar player who is a house favorite in Big Bear where he lives. Please welcome Drew Playkos to the show. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you for inviting me. My pleasure to be here.
That was your Oscar-worthy introduction.
Welcome to the
That
show.
even impressed me. That was pretty good.
Okay, so we've got some questions for you, and I'd just like to start off with, how did you come to work in the toy industry?
I flunked out of Colorado State twice. I call it my alma most. I packed up my family. One kid, we were pregnant, had a 3-legged dog, and a horrible Rambler station wagon. We left Colorado and came to California, and I applied for a job at Mattel, and they liked me, but they said that my transcripts were horrible. So they created a new and crappier job, and I got it. And that was in 1975, and never looked back. That's my industry. That's what I want to be in.
What was the job they created?
I was called a defect analyst. I had to sit on the end of the assembly line, and I thought it was an office job. And I had to discover why the product was not, it wasn't working. And I had to come up with little design changes to fix it. And so I kind of learned my design skills backwards, but because I was doing mechanisms and getting the defect rate down to 0.1% or something like that.
Wow. Okay. And then Eddie, do you have a question? or I can keep going. Okay. Now we know that you have worked on like promotional toy products for like Happy Meals and stuff like that for the quick service foods industry. What would you say are some differences in producing toys for a company like Mattel and as opposed to really massively producing toys by the millions for promotional like Happy Meal toys? What would be some key differences?
Well, the big difference between promotional and retail is that the quantities are astronomical. My first program, I was working for a retail company called Shopper up in Minneapolis. You may know that as the Tootie Company. We had a vehicle line called Stompers, and the folks from Oakbrook came to us and asked us to do a promo. And so we did a 2.5 million test run and then a 25 million production run. And the other point is the quantity. Other than quantity, the price point is super low. And then the last thing was everything has to be made to the all ages safety standard. And anytime that you put things together, we were required to use redundancy. In other words, glue it, screw it, snap it, and soft weld it. You know, always two methods to make sure that the kids wouldn't get inside. So there were probably the biggest was compliance, and then quantity, and then super low price point.
Drew, it's really hard to hear you. It's real choppy coming through, and we just want to make sure that you come through as best as possible. That might work a lot better right there.
I'll hold the mic a little closer.
That does sound a little better. Excellent. Okay, so quantity. Did you say 25 million?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing.
I think there have been some pro models that are higher than that.
How long does it take to manufacture 25 million products?
Well, we hired two factories. We had two sets of tooling, two development teams, and we basically lived over in. Well, we were making them in Hong Kong before Southern China, and so we were, just staying there on top of it. And I can't say enough about our partners over there that dedicated to the delivery. One factory made 15 and one factory made 10. And that was how we got that big number. And other than the engraving on the bottom of the chassis, you couldn't tell them apart.
Wow. And about how long was that process? I'm sure you have deadlines that are
about 8 weeks. We got our production done in about, I think about 14 weeks.
Is that pretty typical for tooling for a product like that? About 8 weeks?
Well, we had like 5 sets of tooling in one factory and 3 in another. So that's why it took a little bit longer.
Okay.
Of course, we had to qualify every cavity. They were multi-cavity molds, so we had to qualify every combination of body and chassis.
Interesting. And what do you mean by qualify?
We'd run it through a test of several hundred pieces for physical and mechanical. Roll test, drop test, compression test. We could, over those little cars, we could put them under the tire of a regular car, and they wouldn't crush.
Wow. I remember those little stompers. That was my favorite toy in a Happy Meal ever. Those were the greatest things. They had different like styles and colors and just the big wheels, and it had little shocks and springs. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah. The retail product, we did about 9 million vehicles a year for the retail product.
Mm-hmm.
And but the one promotion was 25 after the test.
Wow. That's amazing. All right. Now you specialize in compliance. You do a lot of work for DISO, and I know you do a lot of work with like making sure the translations make sense. Can you tell us what is compliance and why is it important in the toy industry?
Probably the top 5 or 10 regulated industries when it comes to product safety. I would say food, tobacco, firearms, automobiles, juvenile products like strollers and playpens, but toys are definitely in there. And the standards are very comprehensive. They mirror standards around the world. They're not completely harmonized in every country, but we all test for uh, objectionable materials like lead. We all test for small parts, and we all test for things that can be liberated by dropping, pulling, biting, twisting. Um, Also, we look at labeling, and so we have to be thinking about maybe the multilingual packaging, and that's just one of the things where it's probably the number one thing if you're a toy designer that you have to be cognizant about is not hurting one of our customers, which are their kids.
I remember I worked in the mini blinds and custom window coverings industry for about 12 years before I went back to school. And man, every couple years you would hear this absolute tragedy of a story with the strings and the ropes and people not knowing how to properly fasten and secure them. And as an installer, I just remember that being like my biggest nightmare. And the biggest thing you had to explain to people is like why you had to drill these plastic things into their, $1 million homes wall. It's like, no, this does happen and it's an absolute tragedy. So, I guess now I'm very glad for that kind of experience and that awareness going into the industry we're in now. And doubly glad that we're making toys for collectors that are about our age. So,
Okay, that's why. So if I tell you our play pattern, yeah, you tell us where in there we would kind of fit. Would that work? Okay, so basically, okay, so we're going for like again a high end plastic, right? Matte plastic with a nice surface finish. We're trying to go with a surface finish that is customizable to paint, so you can customize a paint job and then seal it. So it's customizable. It'll have like we're including decals, and it'll have rubber wheels and lights, and the decals would be like flames and pinstripes and race stripes and bullet holes, and you would be able to customize it any which possible way. The engine is removable. We would then offer like different style hoods that don't have hood scoops. Maybe a door has a crash in it or a dent in it. We're taking into consideration the assembly of it to have multiple interchangeable parts. So that's why it's a collectible and customizable vehicle for like the more adult market is what we're going for. But you tell me with those features, where would you put it? No motors, no magnets. We haven't tires. There'll be tires. The tires turn. It's rubber. There's probably going to be batteries for the lights, LED lights. Uh, but yeah, like you said, it's definitely you'll need to. We're target gearing like the finish will look good the way it does on nice matte black, but it's definitely targeted towards those people who like to customize and paint jobs and finishes, and it can be a red car, you can paint it a green car, blue car, whatever whatever floats your boat is what we're going for, that people will buy it and be like, okay, I'm gonna buy these decals, do this and that. It definitely looks good the way it does in the box, but it's definitely marketed towards being customized.
No lead, mercury, cadmium in the substrates. No phthalates in the tires if they are in fact. I'd go with a TPR or a TPE as opposed to a PVC or a latex because of the allergies. Let's see. Um, I'd have plenty of warnings in your instruction sheet. Probably started off with warnings. This is not a toy. Just be very clear about that. That is not a toy. It's not marketed as a toy. Promoted, advertised as a toy. It is for serious collectors. Your price point puts you out of the toy business. You see, with a toy car that's appropriate for little kids, it's got rounded fenders and headlights look like eyeballs, and no opening doors and closing. It's just wheels. But with the level of detail that you have here, it's very much
Have you
appropriate for someone
seen
over the age of
our
14.
renders?
Yes, I have seen
Okay,
some of
cool.
them.
Yeah, we definitely have a bit.
They're looking really
Okay,
good.
yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. Yeah, we've been working hard on it, and the whole redesign was purposeful. There was a reason behind it. It was definitely more our aesthetic, our view of the line we wanted to bring out, and our whole vision. And we're grateful to be here now. But yeah, those renders are like they're definitely harder edges. They're not soft. I mean, it looks like a hybrid of two different
Oh, yeah.
sorts of and it looks like a collectible, like a collector grade vehicle is what we're going. Definitely having the rubber wheels, the LED lights. So, and about pieces, right? We're considering like the chrome parts, like to have bumpers. And what would you recommend is the best way to achieve that, the most efficient? Like bumpers, rims.
The most cost efficient way would be to vacuum metalize the bumpers. That will give them a very nice chrome appearance. We use that in the toy industry. If the bumpers themselves are ABS, you can actually electroplate them with a thin, a few micron layers of actual metal. But that's going to be a lot more expensive. So I think vacuum metalizing any wheels that have that chrome look,
Okay.
or any other component that it looks like it's supposed to be chrome. Yeah.
Awesome. So we noticed that you have a very good safety for track record for safety, Drew. How did you maintain such a good track record of for safety over your career?
Well, for one, I was scared to death of hurting a kid, and I learned a lot in the factory before I got into the design group, and we had and I learned that you can't inspect in quality. All that does for you is you catch the bad ones before they go out the door, and that's not perfect.
Yeah.
Some bad ones will get in. So compliance, safety, quality, that goes in on the drawing board.
Yeah.
That doesn't get inspected in at the end of the production line, and you need to buy in from your partner in production, in tooling.
Make it part of your design
sourcing.
criteria.
Yes, it is absolutely has to be your number one, at least regulatory compliance, because you get like a few days, you find out you have a problem, you have to turn yourself in, and when that happens, it's called a voluntary recall. But if something happens to get in the field, even if it's in compliance, if it poses an unreasonable risk of injury, illness, God forbid death, it's coming back. It's an involuntary recall mandated by the government. So you have to protect your customer, which is for most of us, it's kids. In your case, it's going to be a collectible person. You protect their investment, you protect their safety, give them a product that is super high integrity.
Awesome.
That takes care of your company. That takes care of your brand. If you take care of
your customer. And I mean, that's one thing Eddie and I are just always kind of, we're very, we're based on our customer. I loved the kind of Steve Jobs model where it's consumer first. Sure, you give them something they've never seen before, but you make sure it functions at absolute peak performance, or at least what it's designed to do is flawless. Okay, so I've got an industry question here for you, like a a Toys R Us question for you. Looking back,
right.
what do you think went wrong with Toys R Us? Major component of what went wrong.
I really
Huh.
have no idea.
I had
I just don't know unless I think they went away. They went to Canada, and
Yeah,
now
they're
they're back.
kind of back. We looked into that a little bit, and it looks like it's kind of like Macy's bought the brand and is setting up little Toys R Us stores inside of Macy's. That's what I've seen so far. So I'm hoping we get some actual retail locations of their own soon. But if there is some, I haven't heard of it yet. But yeah, I know. I heard they were kind of over leveraged. I think they might have bought in KB Toys at some point, and then some bad stuff happened, and they couldn't make it work. But I always thought, their business model was essentially the same thing from when I was a kid, 40 years ago. And I always thought if they had done something to make it more of an experience, like the Rainforest Cafe or something interactive to get the kids playing with the toys in the store, it might have been a little more modern. But it hit the industry so hard. I felt I had to ask you at least one Toys R Us question.
I've always been on the development side, on the product side. It had very little to do with distribution, sales, marketing, other than marketing quite often ran
Yeah,
product development.
yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes I think we're doing all our own, so it's kind of fun. But yeah, I remember marketing at Mattel, and some of the numbers people were like, it's just they didn't seem to have a real aesthetic. It was very, very numbers driven. Um, what is the most rewarding aspect about working in toys, Drew?
Seeing stuff on the shelf that I
Yeah,
worked on. Even better than that, seeing kids hold it in their
yeah.
hands and play with it. I don't care if they're throwing it at their siblings, hitting it with a shovel, just that they're picking it up, and they experience a little bit of wonder and discovery, and maybe they learn something.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I was at Walmart the other day, and I saw a Darth Vader plush doll that I had actually designed the lightsaber for and did the first prototype on the lightsaber. And this was like 3 years ago. I didn't even expect it to be ever come out. And there it was. And I was thinking to myself, when I did it, it lit up. And so I looked around, I poked the button, sure enough, it lights up. I was like, oh, that's cool. I did that.
That wasn't really Darth Vader. That was a Walmart stomper.
that very well could be true. uh, did you ever work on action figures or vehicles?
Oh
What
yeah,
kind of action figures did you work on?
when I was a shopper, that's
Vehicles,
all we
right?
did. Well, not all we did. We had mainline. We had an institutional product line for gymnasiums. If it was for special needs, we had pocket fishermen of all things, uh, games, and tons of vehicles. And I did vehicles. I worked on Barbie's motorhome
Mm-hmm.
or Corvette. Did a lot of vehicle
Okay.
stuff.
And how about action figures? Uh-huh.
A little bit. Yeah, we did. We often did action figures for the promotional meals, and so there'd be a figurine in there, about Planet of the Apes.
Okay, gotcha. What was the most popular toy you ever worked on?
Well, I worked on Barbie, worked on CNC. The Stompers, I think, were very popular. I well, I did school lunch kits for a bunch of years, millions and millions of them, and I really enjoyed that. That was from we designed the whole lunch kit and the
I
flask for
think
the
those are
kids.
actually
That had a lot of utility value.
I think those one behind you, Eddie, those are my original ones from kindergarten and first grade, and I think they're thermos, and it's the Spider-Man and He-Man ones, right above Eddie.
My last metal thermos lunch
Mm.
kit was Bear Country
Oh wow,
Jamboree.
for Disneyland. That's cool.
Yeah, I carried it to work as I was a truck mechanic.
Speaking of toys you carry around, you're going to have to tell us a little bit about the Jake the Snake action figure that shows up in all your pictures when you're out and about.
Okay, I'm going to indict my buddy. When I was working full time down the hill at Otis, I couch surfed for 7 years. For 4 of those years, I stayed with a guy named Sean White, not the snowboarder. And I'd come home from work late Friday night studio, crawl in bed, and dang, that little guy would be inside my pillowcase. And shit, Sean. So I did it. So he'd get up to go to work in the morning, and I'd stuff it in his underwear drawer. So we kind of were always playing a trick on each other by taking Jake and putting it where the other guy didn't.
We're going to, guys, we've had some serious technical difficulties today, so we're going to wrap this up real quick. Drew, couple more quick questions.
Sure.
With all the technology and video games and stuff like that, where do you think the toy industry is headed?
I think the toy industry will continue to be strong in areas like preschool. I'd like to see more products like Dave's, the games that require kids to do a little thinking, figure stuff out, give them a little bit of a sense of wonder, discovery, accomplishment. Mom, look what I did, look what I built. I think things like Legos will continue to be strong, construction sets. I think art and craft might come back in a strong way. Video games, of course, we live in a world where we're bombarded with audio and visual. And I think those kinds of games will always be around from a technology standpoint. But I think good old-fashioned playthings that make kids tired and hungry and get dirty and grass stained, I think that kind of stuff is still a basic building block of children. I think they need to be active. They need to figure things out. They need to get tired. That's
kind
where
of
I
the
think,
skill
that's where I
mastery
think it will
stuff.
go. That's why I think there will always be room for that and collectability. People collect a lot of things. Look in a china cabinet. Look on a gun rack. Look in a stack of records. So
In a
exactly.
box full of stamps.
So I think those kinds of products will always be around if you can be creative, add something new, give it some good features. Licensing will always stay popular. Just my feelings.
What can you give a young toy company like us as far
Don't
as
give
advice?
up. Don't get discouraged. You're going to get a bloody nose here and there. That just happens with any startup. You've just got to stick to it. Be true to your ideals and your mission statement. Be true to your customers. That's not a guarantee that it's going to work, but those are things that you have to do to even have a chance for it to work. Make good stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to go with it. And I've been using this term and saying it a lot. It's like it's a diehard fans create big brands, and I think we're building a fan base of diehard fans that are following us, that are like, oh, I want 2 of them, I'm so ready. And it starts with a couple, but diehard fans create brands, and once we get those diehard fans, I think the sky's the limit. And we started collecting, I guess you could say that we started collecting diehard fans, and we're excited about the whole process, everything. And just having you on board and being able to reach out to you as a resource to help us with any questions we may have is it's a tremendous help. We thank you, man.
Drew,
just because you graduated doesn't mean we don't. We can't talk about this stuff anymore. one thing I would pass along is, there's trends, and there's new things that are happening here, and there's fads and all of that. But one thing for sure, quality. Quality just never seems to go out of style. It,
Yeah.
style goes out of style, but quality doesn't go out of style. And by quality, I mean product integrity, safety, good materials, good construction, well thought out designs. That just doesn't go out of style.
That's fantastic. Drew, two more quick questions. Where we were lucky enough to interview two Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle adventures. An artist and a writer was our first interview, and so we're trying to start a tradition of two questions we ask all our guests. What is your first toy memory? And if you were a superhero, what would your power be?
Well, okay. My first toy that I remember were a cowboy hat and a pistol. And the TV show popular in those days, I'm old, was Hop Along Cassidy. My mother said I wouldn't come in. She'd say, Drew, lunch is ready. And I'd pull my gun out of my holster and said, I'm not coming in until you call me Hoppy. That was Hop Along Cassidy. And so she'd say, come on in for lunch, Hoppy. And then I'd put my holster back in and go in for dinner. And if I could be a superhero, I knew that I was different when I was 9 years old. If you could go 100 meters without touching the bottom of the pool, you could jump off of the high dive in the deep end of the swimming pool. And so, of course, I was able to do it. And so I got to go up on the high dive. And there was like 9 of us that got to do it that day. And the first kid jumped off the high dive, and he hollered Geronimo. I jumped off this high dive. I was second. I hollered Zorro. And the other kids all hollered Geronimo. And I'm like treading water in the deep end going like, did I miss something here? So if I could be a superhero, I'd kind of like be Zorro. I'd like to be a friend of the meek, the poor and the weak. That would be that's that. Who I'd want to be. I'd want to be Zorro.
I remember as I was growing up, staying with my grandparents and watching the old Tyrone Power, I believe it was Zorro, way back, the black and white one.
Yep.
Was it Tyrone Power?
There was the Disney stuff, and I forget who he was. And I had a crush on the girl that worked in the cantina, too.
That's awesome.
And I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy that played Sergeant Garcia had a beautiful singing voice. And of course, he was the comic relief in the show. Oh, yeah. I forget his name, but there's a version of him singing the Zorro theme song on YouTube if you look hard enough for it. And I mean, he was a well-rounded, an actor. He's never had a leading role, but he was a pretty good character.
Didn't he play Santa Anna in the Alamo or one of the remakes or one of the Alamo movies? I feel like
he may have.
Yeah. Listen, Drew, real quick while I've got you here, I have to show you this. I showed Paul and Chris, our other interviewers, but you might remember this. This was my mom and her sister's toys growing up. It is Geronimo.
Wow.
From Mark's Toys.
Very cool.
Johnny West line.
Very cool. That's a great old
1965. Isn't that cool?
Very.
Well, listen, Drew, we can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us on the podcast. Certainly everything you've done for us for Oddfrog Entertainment is a small company. We've talked about you before on the podcast and how you put us in touch with Johnny, who is an absolute genius, and we love him. And we just thank you so much for coming on the show with us today, Drew. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
It's my pleasure, you guys. And I'll leave you with this thought. A teacher can learn a lot from his students, and I learned from you guys too.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Drew. Thank you so much.
Best of luck to you all.
Really
Drew,
appreciate it, Drew.
We're going to have you hang on after we stop recording for like 30 seconds just so it uploads real quick. It has a little bit of lag in the upload. But once again, thank you, Drew. And we'll see everybody else next time on the Oddfrog Chop Shop.
Thanks,
guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every little bit helps us get to that Kickstarter, successful Kickstarter. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the Oddfrog Chop Shop podcast. This episode is brought to you by MLCVoice.com and OddFrogEntertainment.com. Theme music is Burlesque Heartache by RKVC. Please remember to rate and subscribe. Until next time, keep creating and keep playing.